Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee, getting ready to do my squats, get my day started, and yes, I am using a hook grip today on my coffee. Why? Because I need to practice my hook grip, and you only get better by doing it, right? Hook grip every damn rep. And yes, I'm wearing a medal today also. You know why? Because a bunch of people always say silly stuff like, Jason, you're not a strength athlete. What are you talking about? I'm like, okay, I got a bunch of medals that says otherwise, but I digress. Y'all's opinion is more important than facts. On to the point. Yesterday, I made a video for my current events talking about lifting as we get older. And I pointed out a perfect example of saying, look, guys, I'm 41 and I do Bulgarian style training. I lift heavy 6 to 7 days a week. 6 of it's on camera. I hit training maxes on as many as 5 exercises every day on camera, right? Every day. I don't have joint problems. I don't hurt. Pretty much injury free. No major injuries since I was in my 20s. So, it's been a while. It's been a while. But the point is, I had people come in and say, look, that doesn't work. Like, wait till you're 50. And you're going to find that your joints and everything are going to hurt. And I want to make the case for the fact that it's not necessarily true. There are plenty of guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are insanely strong, who lift insanely heavy, who don't have joint problems. I disagree with this concept, and I don't think it's based on reality. It's bodybuilding nonsense. And again, one of the things I looked up when someone said this, I pulled up like the USPA. I'm like, let me just hop over to, I don't know, if I were to do the USPA later, right? That's the biggest non-drug tested powerlifting federation in the US currently, to my knowledge. I could be wrong, but I think they have the highest membership and most number of meets. Therefore, it's going to be the most competitive. And we come back to that point of people who use stuff, their joints are not necessarily safe. Testosterone is not going to protect your joints from heavy weight. So I pulled up the 55 to 59 range and just said, let me see what's there. I bet you I would be under 200 pounds at that point in my life. I don't think I'm going to be healthy walking around at 220 or 230 at that point in my life. So I said, what is the 198? In the 55 to 59 weight class, the current American record for that federation is a 534 squat and a 611 deadlift. And that was set last year, actually, I believe. Could have been, I think some of those were 2017. So there's at least one guy in his late 50s squatting over 500 and deadlifting over 600 and doesn't seem to have any joint problems. Walking around just fine, who weighs less than 200 pounds at weigh-in. Everyone who lifts heavy as they get older gets hurt, why do we have all these masters strength athletes who are just fine? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that when you set bodybuilding goals aside and you start saying, I want to be fit and healthy and very, very strong as I get older, I'm going to argue that heavy lifting is the way to go. Because when it comes to joint health, what is the best way to avoid joint injury and all of these things as we get older, or just in general? Number one, you spread the weight through the most joints possible. So if you're going to do the leg training, a barbell squat, particularly something like a low bar squat, which puts a nice distribution across the knees, hips, spine, everything else, it gives you a nice distribution of the workload across multiple joints. Well, the more joints that you have involved in an exercise, the less stress that goes on the individual joints, and it keeps you within a normal human movement pattern. Our bodies tend to get injured less when they are put in a normal, healthy movement pattern, and you maintain those movement patterns long term. You don't let them degenerate, and that's a perfect example of it, a barbell squat, compared to like a leg extension, which is going to put your knee joint into an unnatural position. You're just less likely to get hurt. You're less likely to get hurt. What else keeps joints healthy? Moving them through a full range of motion. Through a full effective range of motion under load gives you the best joint health and mobility over time. So when you look at it from that perspective, full range of motion, big exercises, And big exercises are going to give you the potential to lift the most weight. In other words, are you going to move the most weight with your muscles on a leg extension or a barbell squat? On a high bar squat or a low bar squat? Low bar squat. Everyone can do slightly more on a low bar squat. There's biomechanics behind it. Greg Knuckles broke down and looked at the biomechanics of it and said that on average, a person, and it's going to vary a little from person to person, should be able to low bar squat approximately 5% more than a high bar squat. Approximately 5% more. And it gives better range of motion on the hips. So when people are saying lifting heavy is going to be a problem as you get older, I'm going to disagree. I think isolation work and lifting light is going to be a problem, because here is something that I notice. I've seen other guys in their 40s notice. I've seen even guys like Mark Ripto notice. The older you get, the higher your training volume goes, the more your connective tissue hurts. The more your connective tissue hurts, the more it gets inflamed. And I've noticed that. I can't sit around doing high rep curls and tricep extensions. It lights up my connective tissue. I can't do that stuff anymore in my 40s. I can do singles on a bench press and a strict press all day long. Every day, actually. I do them every 6 days a week. 6 days a week. I do training max on the bench press and a training max on the standing press. I don't have any inflammation in my connective tissue. My joints don't hurt. And I can't say the same from, remember, even in my late 30s, I would go back and do tricep extensions. Then I would have to back off on my pressing because later I would complain about connective tissue inflammation. Well, that's why. So the point we need to make here is that if all this higher volume training and the higher work training is harder on connective tissue, it's going to cause more inflammation, then really lightweight, high volume kind of goes out the window as you get older. It goes out the window. If bigger exercises are easier on your joints, then the smaller exercises become, again, less than ideal as we get older. So the point we come around to, lifting as heavy as you can with good form on the biggest exercises possible is actually going to be easier overall on maintaining healthy joints. It's going to be easier on your connective tissue. So if we come down to the point of, if our goals are to stay as fit as possible as we age, as far as our lifting is concerned, I'm not talking about our cardiovascular activity, I'm not talking about other stuff, because people need those things. I do believe you need conditioning work. And I prescribe that. I tell people that. List cardio is good. GPP work is good. I think if you really want to be really well-rounded in your fitness, you need a combination. You need a serious strength training base. That should always be your number one priority. But you do need some true endurance work, and you do need general physical preparedness, which handles a lot of your higher intensity conditioning work. I think those three elements are necessary in the long term to maintain an ideal level of fitness. Right? You need a combination of those, but strength training is always going to be your base. But the point we come back to, if the biggest exercises are easier on your joints, they tend to create better mobility in the joints and better strength in the joints, and high volume training seems to cause the most problems with recovery, particularly as we age, and that's been noted by a lot of coaches. Again, Rick Till's one of those who's talked about it extensively, as he works with a lot of elderly clients. He has coached a lot of people in their 50s and 60s and 70s, personally. So, I mean, he's an interesting resource on that. When you take that into account, what are you left with? Big exercises with relatively heavy weight. Also, those are the ones that are going to give you the best bone density, because the more weight that you can move on a big exercise, the higher your bone density is going to be. That becomes beneficial as we get older. I'm going to argue the exact opposite. Based upon everything I've observed, I think heavy lifting, and when I say heavy lifting, I don't mean using crappy form and throwing weight around. I mean heavy weights that you can actually handle with normal progressive overload, not doing stupid stuff, not wrapping your knees up, not beating weights up off of pins. I'm talking just normal, raw exercises done through a normal movement pattern, using natural movement patterns that are normal to the human body, are the best way to train as you get older. For your general fitness, that's what your resistance training needs to be comprised of. I'm going to argue that all this other nonsense, these smaller exercises, tons of high volume machines, wrapping yourself up, knee wraps destroy knees. Knee wraps and leg extensions are what destroy knees in the long term. Doing half squats destroys knees in the long term. Not heavy full range of motion squats. It doesn't destroy your knees. And when we go look at, again, the powerlifting community, that's exactly where you see masters athletes who are doing just fine. Now, I'm not saying that being a competitive athlete is ideal for your long-term health. It isn't always necessarily, because you are pushing the limits in a competitive environment. And anytime you're pushing your physical limits, your chances of injury start going up dramatically. But the idea is the same there. For general fitness, I think that shows that it is absolutely possible to go to those extremes and still be healthy, still be well, still be very strong. So if you take a person who's older and you back it down a notch and you don't push it to that competitive extreme, I think it works out pretty well. And as far as general strength goes, when you look at guys who have strength trained their whole life, actually lifted heavy weight, what do you see when they get older? There's a lot of older guys out there who've done strength sports who managed to not get too hurt doing them, who in their older age are still deadlifting 500 pounds. There are guys out there in their 60s still deadlifting 500 pounds. Of course, we have guys in comps who are under 200 pounds, like the example I just gave, deadlifting over 600 in the late 50s. And then you have guys like Jack LaLanne, made it all the way to 92 before pneumonia got him, who used to credit the deadlift, the barbell deadlift, with maintaining his back as he got older. No, I completely disagree with this concept. I disagree with this concept that lifting heavy as we get older is bad. I'm going to go out on a limb and say lifting light, focusing on fluff and pump, I think that's bad as you get older. Now, granted, that's better than being sedentary, but I think the older lifter is going to get more health and more fitness out of lifting actually really heavy, really heavy. I mean, heavy for them, heavy being a relative term, heavy being what can you do with good form and full range of motion without your technique breaking down. That's what I mean is heavy. I don't mean all out one rep maxes and grinders and all of that. I'm talking lifting actual heavy in a training environment with proper progression and proper technique. I think that's the way to go. I legitimately believe that. And I think that's what the real evidence would point towards. And I'm probably biased there, but it doesn't change what I believe. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.